Okay, we're gonna hop in. I want to welcome everybody to our May 15th case collaboration. We're being recorded. Today we're going to be talking about managing progress and defining accountability with our clients. So I'm Christine Shivrick. I am the program's chair, and I want to welcome you to our case collaborations. We will be meeting again in June and July. We will not, however, have an August case collaboration. So I just want everyone to be aware, we will meet June and July, and then we're going to skip August, and then we'll hop back in September, and then we'll end up skipping December as well. So Krista, if you don't mind hopping onto the next slide for me.
Who is that?
So most of you have already been here, so I'm going to go through this just very briefly. But if you don't already have yourself muted, if you could go ahead and put yourself on mute. You can do that by going down to the bottom of your screen. On the lower left-hand side, you'll see a little microphone, and you can click on that. When you want to participate, go ahead and unmute yourself. But in order to get good sound quality for our recording, if you could stay muted unless you're participating, that would be wonderful. The recordings should be coming up. I keep looking into it. I don't have any control over the website, but hopefully the recordings will be coming up on the website, at least the last 6 months of them shortly. So if everyone will just bear with me while the administration people who do the website get that fully up and running. If you happen to be joining us by phone, you can push *6 to mute or unmute yourself. So that's *6 if you're on the phone to mute and unmute yourself. You can also, in order to participate, there's two ways. You can go back down to that lower bottom bar and type something into a chat, or you can click on participants at that lower bar, find yourself on the panel that pops up, and go ahead and raise your hand. We're going to do our best to monitor both the chat and the hands being raised. If you would like to participate, we want as many people to participate as possible. So please feel free when you have something to share to go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand. Again, if you're joining us by phone, you're going to push *9 to raise your hand and then lower it again. Okay, and then Krista, if you don't mind advancing one more. Thank you. So today's opening word is slow, S-L-O-W, slow. So if you could send that and the closing word within 24 hours to cceu@adhdcoaches.org. That is the only way that you can get credit, because ICF requires us to have some way to monitor that you've been here for the entire hour. So we need to have both the opening and the closing word in order to issue you a CCEU. So we have a packed hour, so I'm going to quickly jump into the competency because we are getting CCEUs through ICF, I apologize. We are getting them through ICF. We always want to kind of pull in the PCC markers that ICF has laid out. And so when we're talking about managing progress and accountability with our clients, we're actually looking at competencies 9, 10, and 11. And the words that that kind of popped out to us when we were putting this presentation together is exploring progress, allowing the client to consider his or her path forward, including, as appropriate, support mechanisms, resources, and potential barriers, design the best methods of accountability for him or herself, and notice and reflect the client's progress. So there are more in those competencies, but those were the key ones that stuck out to the committee as far as things that we wanted to kind of keep in mind as we continue through. And I see, Nancy, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, my computer just muted when you said the word. I'm so sorry.
The opening word,
Yeah,
it's slow, SLOW.
it's so appropriate. I'm
Yeah.
slow. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to shake things up a little bit. Krista is going to take over, and she has kind of something a little different for us all. So go ahead, Krista.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to do something different today. We're going to start with actually presenting the case study, and we're going to do it with a video. So we're going to start with that. Whoops. And I was showing it to Christine earlier. And
hi, everyone.
Oh, there we
We're
go.
going to do things a little bit different this month by introducing our case study. Even though we've decided to choose a high school student for our case study, this can be applied to any individual. In a few minutes, we'll be asking for situations where an adult may have gotten stuck. Meet Jack. He's a freshman in high school, very bright, but has an IEP for both ADHD and extreme executive function challenges. Jack was recently assigned a paper, and sometimes that can be really hard for him. He has difficulty organizing his thoughts, getting started, and even has self-doubts about being a good writer. Jack has a very good support team that works with him. In particular, his English teacher has been great this year. She took the paper and she broke it into chunks. She then requested that he come to her every day so that they could review his progress. But Jack decided not to go visit his teacher. Instead, he went home and he started to write the essay, deleted it, started to write it again, deleted it, and repeated this pattern several times. The next week, his support team received an email stating that Jack had not submitted his essay. Everyone was a little surprised since they had all thought that Jack had been working on his paper. At their next coaching session, Jack and his coach tried to figure out why he was stuck, what was the barrier, what was preventing him from moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about Jack's case and how we were able to get him to move forward.
Okay, so that's going to be kind of where we're going to start our foundation. Does anyone who works with adults like to share maybe a brief kind of story of where they're working with an adult who was stuck?
Oh, hold on.
This is Faith. I always begin with an initial consultation, and with my ADHD clients, it's not unusual that they're having trouble getting the materials to me. They're not long, they're not complicated. I stress that it's fine to skip things or answer quickly and we'll sort it out later. And I still have clients. Sometimes we end up having to reschedule because they just don't manage to get it in time.
Great.
Yep.
That's a wonderful example. I think we've probably even experienced that when we're working with kids on the parent side. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And Andrea has something to share, Krista, as well.
okay. Andrea? Oops, I'm going to take you off mute. Maybe. Doesn't look like I can.
Here, let me try. Nope. Oh, is it?
No, I'm sorry, it wasn't me.
Oh, it wasn't you. Okay, sorry. Nancy, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Nancy, did you have something to share?
She might have had her hand up from before.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Oops.
Okay, and so Krista, Rebecca said the video was awesome. And I just want to just mention that Krista uses this like a lot of, she'll make little mini videos for her clients because she sees a lot of students. It's just a different way of approaching different topics that come up in coaching. So yeah, she's super good at this and makes them all the time. So yeah.
Okay, so with the situation with Jack, like, you know, really the first step in the coaching session was to figure out, like, why was he stuck? Why wasn't he able to move forward? And that was something that we really had to figure out. You know, I think sometimes, you know, the teachers would be like, okay, why isn't it here? Like, I gave you all these chances to come in. I broke it down for you. But, you know, as coaches, we know that we kind of have to address things a little bit differently. And so for me, it was more about getting to the, like, what was the thing that got in your way? You know, what was the area that you were having trouble? And once we started exploring that, there were really two themes that were happening. You know, the first was the negative self-messages. I'm not a good writer. I shouldn't have to need this type of support. So things like that were going through his head, which then led to shame, which really just paralyzed him. So for him, those were the two things that were getting in the way. Can anyone else talk briefly about a barrier that they might have come across when they're working with someone who has been stuck?
Fear of judgment.
Yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
Perfectionism, always getting A's.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate has her hand raised.
Yep.
Yeah, so I have a lot of clients that get stuck in this space, and oftentimes it's just not even knowing where to start. The choices are too overwhelming, so they get stuck in the amount of items to choose from.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And I find that, you know, and I kind of always acknowledge that with my clients, that when there appears to be so many choices, it actually feels like there's no choice to make.
Right.
That they're so paralyzed by everything that's going on. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, so obviously I think we've all had those situations where we've come across a student who, you know, is stuck, and we really kind of have to kind of help them explore, and then kind of have to help them make that first step. And, you know, ironically, I've worked with Jack for a while, and, you know, he gave me this article about 2 years ago, and it was this great article. I'll have to try to find it. And it was going from 1 to 10. And it talked about how we just have to make that first step. And he really resonated with it, because he's always thinking about that final product, and he's not thinking about the first step. And so, you know, we've used that a lot with his coaching is, okay, let's just make it to step 1. You're thinking about 10. So how can we get to step 1? And so in that case, like, progress looks different for individuals. Like for Jack, it's just getting to step 1. That's progress for him. And, you know, I personally think that progress is that ability to move forward. And also the other thing he did to kind of get to step 1 was he reached out to his teacher. And, you know, he's the type of student that if he's able to express his emotions, can't do it in person, but he can do it through email. And so he reached out to his teacher through email and said, you know, I'm really sorry I didn't come see you. I was kind of embarrassed, and I just, you know, didn't know what to do. And like I said, she's been fabulous this year, and she immediately reached back out to him and said, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. We all have this experience. And so it was really reassuring to him. And I think it really helped him kind of move to step 2 for him, because he, you know, he knew he had that support at that point. Can anyone else talk about some words that they might use to define the word progress?
And I know Peter has his hand raised. So Peter, did you have a comment?
Yes, my comment it might have been on the last part, but yeah. I love the concept of I read this in a procrastination book. The idea of finishing, instead thinking of starting each time. In other words, you know, we start to think, oh, geez, I want to do it all right now or not now. Getting them to say, just keep starting again and make some progress, versus worrying too much about finishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Peter.
Anyone else have some words that they would like to use, or some ways as a coach that they can help define progress with their clients?
I kind of like what Peter was saying, and it's kind of like start is progress, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just starting is progress.
Exactly, yeah. Faith has her hand up.
Yep.
I talk with my clients a lot about measurable chunks. So we measure the chunks, and that's kind of how we deal with progress, ticking off those boxes. We also restart a lot. That really resonated what Peter said about starting. I have one adult college student who has a lot of negative self-talk and gets stuck, and we constantly restart.
Mm-hmm. And I think I evidently it's many ideas, but I think I remember hearing Alan Brown saying, you know, just focus on the start, and if you have to restart it, 15 times, that's okay. But, not going to that, not going to that 10, like Krista said, right away. And Nancy, Nancy asked a question, how to raise her hand. If you go down to the bottom bar and you click on participants, you'll see names pop up, and then you could raise your hand that way.
That bar can be up top.
Okay. I'm trying to. I'm
Okay.
How
Well,
about,
I was going to say, let's go to Alice because she has her hand raised.
okay.
Okay. I always encourage people to have a plan. And then the 2 questions we use is what's next? But in the beginning, the question is what has to happen first? And it allows them to back into that first step. And by having the plan and the steps and the benchmarks, there's none of that self-talk and the negativity in building the plan. So it lets them start without starting.
Yeah, great, thank you. Thank you. And Faith, did you want to add to that?
Yes, one of the things I work on with everybody in the beginning is looking at how we're defining enthusiasm. Because we live in a culture where things generally only count if it's huge. It's a touchdown, you were the top rated in something, you bought the whole new house and redecorated it in 2 days. And I talk about shifting a definition of enthusiasm that includes some kind of appreciation. Some people like the word celebration, some people feel that's over the top, but some way to appreciate each step on the journey rather than only focusing on what we would define usually as the big things. And I use the example of babies when they're learning to stand up or to walk, where even if they do anything, everybody's thrilled and cheered. And you don't say a baby is stupid because the first 3 times it tried to walk, it didn't make it.
Right.
That's a great example too.
Yep, perfect. Wow, that's great, powerful.
Rebecca has her hand raised as well.
Hello. So one thing that keeps my clients from making progress or moving forward is that their view that they're not making progress or moving forward, and that they are noticing what is not done versus what is done. So a lot of times they are actually making a lot of progress, but they're just seeing all the stuff that is not yet accomplished. So perspective.
That's a great point, because I think, even with Jack, like he was like, yeah, I started writing it like 5 times and I deleted it every time, so yeah. And I had said, well, one thing you could do is just not delete it and just keep on going just to see what you have there, right? Because sometimes they need that visual sign of the progress as well of what they've completed.
Yep, absolutely. Michelle.
Actually, Rebecca just said almost exactly what I was
Perfect.
going to say. So that recognizing that they're making progress and saying, you did it once more, then when they're looking at the negative saying, well, but you did it one more time than you did it last week, right? Because you weren't doing it at all last week. So here we are. And one of the tools I use to do that is to, I talk about it similar to meditation. So I use that as an example where you gently bring yourself back to your breath. The idea of mindfulness meditation is your mind wanders and you come back to your breath. So similarly here, you did it once, you fell off, that's okay. Let's just gently, without judgment, bring yourself back and try it again, or tweak it, or whatever they have to do to make it feel right for them.
Nice. That's awesome. And, a lot of times I find with our adult clients, they come to us with one thing in mind. Like, I've had several men, like in their late 30s with 40s, feeling the societal pressure that they're supposed to be married, have the perfect job, 2.5 kids, a dog, whatever that picture might be. So they come to me, like, I need to find a job. Like, I need to do this. And almost on all the cases, as they've started to learn about themselves, they've realized that, oh, wait a minute, like, I need to learn who I am. And finding a job is like way down the path. Like, I got to figure out where I am right now and what makes me happy before. And so it's when we have to kind of shift back and I have to help them see, like, this is an important piece as well. Like, the job is still important, yes. So that, help them see that learning about themselves is progress as well, because it helps them move forward. So I think that sometimes as a coach, we have to be very careful. They want those big ticket items, and kind of as they're learning about themselves and how they best operate, those things, like people have said, they don't get noticed and they don't, get celebrated as a form of progress.
Absolutely.
Peter has his hand raised, Krista.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say I love sort of the behavioral idea of just, no matter what your thoughts and feelings are, just take action, and one thing I say is do the behavior. So, that might be just, if somebody doesn't study in the library and it might do them some good, the behavior is standing up, getting your book bag and walking to the library. Do the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think about it, just do the behavior. And if you do it enough times, you'll actually, start to study when you get there.
Yeah.
So it's like,
we had talked a little bit about this when we were kind of preparing this. That was one of the things the article 1 to 10 talked about. Like, sometimes it's just packing up the backpack. Like, that first step is just doing that, and that's making progress. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Rebecca, we'd love to hear from you.
You're on mute too.
Yep.
I didn't put my hand down, but one thing, and I know one thing I'm thinking about in terms of Jack is that when he started his paper, to get other eyes on it rather than, this is so awful, we all know about the perfectionism of ADHD, I can't possibly hand this in, but get other eyes on something, get help outside. And he had a lot of help, clearly. So just in each little step.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. And Krista, before we move on, I want to jump to Nancy, and then there's like 1 or 2 other people as well.
Okay. Nancy?
Unmute. Sorry, I burned all the fingers on my hand the other day, and so I've got Vaseline on it. I am so sorry. Yeah, one of the things that I do is, number 1, try to help the person understand about their ADD brain and what might be causing it, and help them figure out. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, and help them separate themselves from whatever the symptomology is and try to define, okay, is it actually that they're avoiding whatever task it is because it's too, they don't know what's involved. So I have them try to do the setup first and then, try to step into it one step at a time. And you guys kind of mentioned that, but I call it previewing whatever it is. So separating the task from the setup and then, go on that way.
Nice. Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you. And Catherine, you have your hand up.
I do. Thanks. I coach with a lot of males, and I try to really, when I bring them back to thinking about something, I really try to bring it back into an area that they understand better. So that's a lot of times that's sports, right? When we're talking about, going out to play sports, and that you don't just go out there and hit a home run or just, get on base immediately. You have to practice. So this I've done it and then I threw it away, or I started it and I did whatever. It's still the same thing. It's like you're getting your hands in it, you're practicing it, you're doing something with it, so that, and you're getting better at it because you're doing it right. So I wanted to coordinate it with something in real life that makes sense to them too, because what's going on here is the same as anything else in real life, right? Working on a car, anything. Giving them an example, it might be that they're into music or something, and we talk about the amount of practice that goes in with it, or even getting, you've got a coach that's helping you do with your music. So I like to attach it to something that is real for them, that makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Yep, thank you. Thank you very much. And then we have one more. Kathy, would you like to add?
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. When I work with students and they get a project, like a paper to write, I'll help them plan it backwards. So we go to the due date, and I take little Post-its on a calendar, and I say, this is when it's due. What are you doing the night before?
Mm-hmm.
And break it down. The night before, I put it in my backpack, right? And just before that, what have you done? Had somebody read it over for me and look at it. And just before that, what have you done? It doesn't, and so they can see the steps involved, and where are there points along the way to ask for help, and what's the first step. So the first step, when we plan backwards, they kind of see how much time it's going to take and what time is available for them.
Nice. I love that.
And most of the kids that I work with, I say, how are you going to start the paper? And they say, just sit down and start writing it. And I say, do you need to research it? Oh, yeah. Oh, that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even college students, I go, well, what's that first step? Oh, I think I need to go to the library.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. And, for those of you who work with students, Sarah Ward has that backwards planning. It's called Get Ready, Do Done. So if you just Google search her, she has a template where it's done is red, doing is green, and getting ready is yellow, and it kind of walks you backwards. And then across the top, and you fill in everything, and then at the bottom, it has you work forward through the plan. And that's a great visual, and you can even do that for homework setup, and have kind of those colors out and have kids move homework through those steps as well. But if you
what's her name?
Sarah Ward. And I think her partner is Kristen Jacobson, W-A-R-D. Yep. So if you just Google search that, you'll see a bunch of different examples online. But that's exactly what I was thinking, Kathy, when you're talking about that. Thank you. Okay, Krista, looks like we're ready to go on.
Okay, so what are the different aspects of progress, right? So what things do we have to have in place to see if progress is happening, right? So we definitely need self-awareness, right? So, and that can be, I think, really challenging for, the individuals that we work with, just being aware that they are stuck. I mean, it's quite amazing how, they don't even realize they're stuck sometimes. So, just getting them self-aware of, what is happening in the moment, that can be really important. Also the self-discovery, I see quite a few students who have this challenge with writing, and you always hear the same line, I'm not a good writer, and they actually are great writers. It's just that, sometimes they have trouble organizing their thoughts, or, they have trouble kind of putting that first sentence on the paper. And so, we also need that ability to, for them to see that, they are good at something, but they're not necessarily bad just because it's challenging. And then, what's getting in the way? So being able to acknowledge, like, yes, I get stuck. So moving forward, what's going to be my plan for when I get stuck? I used to have a student that I worked with that we would have a timer and it would be set on 15 minutes. If he was still sitting there and nothing had been completed, that was his signal that he needed to ask for help. And then we had like, okay, I reach out to my parents first. If they're not available, then I reach out to my coach. So just that ability to acknowledge sometimes that you can't even get to step one, and being aware of that. And what sets the stage for things going the way that they want it to? You know, that kind of gets back to, okay, so if I want my paper to be finished this way and kind of doing that backward planning, what needs to be in place in order for that to happen? Can anybody else think of any other aspects for progress, things that have to be in place for our individuals to be able to see that they are, you know, having progress?
Adela, go ahead.
Sometimes it involves brainstorming with them different ways of approaching the problem. They have, I mean, my clients are so creative and they come up with great steps. I can think of one client in particular that writing a paper is so painful that he thought just dictating it, he realized that if you use the auto dictate function, I mean, there's all this great technology that it just came out a lot easier. And then suddenly writing a paper was never an issue anymore. So brainstorming with them on different routes to get there.
Yeah, exploring options, right? That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Rebecca has her hand up.
So Krista, I apologize if I'm going to repeat something that you said because I'm an introvert and when I'm listening and writing and I actually don't have ADHD, but I'm not great at multitasking here. And the thing that needs to be in place to make sure you're having progress is to know where you're headed. And so if we have clients that are in for a whole coaching arc, I know kind of we're both, talking a little bit about students here today, this is kind of the focus, but that you need to know at the beginning what it is they're hoping for at the end of the coaching so that you can tell if you're always moving towards that, even if you may be having what feels like fails or, you know, very small wins in the meantime. Am I actually making progress, moving towards that bigger thing? And almost always they do. Almost always they're moving towards that thing, even if it's, they're not where they were when they began with coaching.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we're going to talk in a couple of minutes about, you know, some ways that we can keep track of progress, because I think that we do have to have that reminder sometimes. But what Adela said also made me think of something. She was talking about her student using the voice to text, which I love that that ability, but sometimes it's actually getting them to acknowledge and accept help, right? So, you know, we have so many individuals out there that kind of know, you know, what to do or who to go to for help, but sometimes it's just that ability to be able to accept that help, which can be really difficult.
Krista, that when you guys are all talking, and I don't know, can you guys see my diagram here? It's a triangle and it has an upside triangle in the middle. And this is from Gretchen Wegner, so I don't take credit for it. But she always says the key elements to success are having a team, having a routine, and having the right tools. Also addressing any self-talk. I then incorporated brain activation and motivation on my own because I think that's such an important component. But I think these are all kind of aspects that need to be in place, like you were saying, like, and Nancy even commented in the corner, in the chat, you know, our students or people in general wait till it's too late to ask for the help. So, you know, getting these key ingredients, the team in place, who are those members of your success team? You know, what kind of routine are we going to put in place, and the tools that you need, I think is also, you know, some important parts of this progress or aspects of progress.
All right, so what is accountability, right? How do you as a coach define accountability? Would anybody like to offer an answer for that? How about Kate?
So this is a topic that I don't know any of you that are familiar with Cameron Gott. He's been exploring this a lot, and I tend to agree with his approach, which is accountability means something different for each of us. So in the beginning of a coaching relationship, I have a big conversation with my client about what accountability means. So for example, I have one adult college student, like an older adult college student, going back, and accountability is a trigger word for him. It promotes shame. So we don't even use the word accountability. We just use check-ins. What would be helpful for a check-in on your progress? What would be helpful to move you forward? What do you need for support? So, but if I had to identify what does accountability really mean to me as a coach, from my perspective, it is that support. How can I offer that support to move you towards your goal? What sort of things does my client need in order to wrap around their goals so that they reach them or get closer to reaching them?
Good, I agree. Yep.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be my second point, was how do you get your client to define accountability? Because I think, you know, as a coach, that could look different than how your client is. So having that established in the beginning of the relationship is really important, so that you can make sure that you're not on two different levels. I mean, that could be really difficult. Anne Marie has her hand up.
Yeah, and I know I've mentioned this on past calls, and I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but just to piggyback on what Kate said, Cam Gott's work on this, along with Casey Moore, they wrote this ebook called Curious Accountability, and they lead you right through like 3 essential conversations to have with clients at the beginning, and then ongoing conversations to really help define what accountability is in the coaching partnership for coach, for the client, and based on a shared definition. So it's just such a great resource. I'll put a link to it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Linnell said follow through on what you said you wanted to do, as being that accountability.
Yep, awesome. And Peter has his hand raised.
Hang on, let me find him. Wait, you're muted, Pete.
So sorry. So I have ADD, and so the idea of saying this is what I'm going to do, and actually, again, doing the behavior of making it happen, is the crux of, you know, a lot of what happens in our life. So any way to help them to say this is what I'm going to do, and again make it happen, is just huge, you know, as a practice in life. So it is saying this is what I'm going to do and actually making it happen.
Yeah. Thanks, Pete. Catherine.
When I talk to clients, I like what they used to do in elementary school with the teachers. Remember, the student gets distracted with something, the teacher has some little sign, maybe she touches them, does something to help them recenter, right? Back to what they were trying to do, because they've gotten off. And so versus accountability, it might just be, this is a checkpoint to come back in, and I can, you know, between the two of us, we can help you recenter back to what you were trying to do, because I know you've been pulled off on other things, right? So this is just a touch point to kind of help recenter back to what you wanted to do.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. I love that. It goes so nicely with Michelle's bringing that breath back, you know, like that gently bringing yourself back to try it. That kind of that accountability piece of just kind of bringing yourself back and recentering it. Yeah.
Right. It's not a judgment point. It's just a help point, you know, to come back, because, and I tell them, because I realize the world has been tugging on you in so many other ways. So it's probably taking you off track.
Yeah.
You know, what do you need to do next to get back on what?
Love it. I love it. I know Julie has something to share too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is exciting. I didn't know about this opportunity to be with this group, so thank you. Yeah, one of the things similarly to what Kate had said, it's about the client. And I actually have a list of ways that I do a lot of work with a lot of students, the ways that they can be accountable to me. So I give them options of things. Sometimes they don't know what that means, so I give them little ideas and prompts. And I find it's not only different for each person, but also different for their situation. So they may be going through midterms or finals, and they're having challenges at that. And how can I help them, support them through that? Sometimes it's connecting with them every day, make sure that they are doing what they had intended to do via text message. I've had clients where they want me to check in with them, every hour. Yesterday, I was working with someone and she had to finish something. She had 2 hours to do it, and she goes, "Oh, I can't go with my mom, because of my grandma. I don't get this done. I got a 2-hour extension." So okay, let's break this down. Broke it down into all the steps that she needed to do, and I had her text me after every single step she did, and she knew she had about 20 minutes to do it each step, and she got it all done. And when I didn't hear from her after 25 minutes, said, "How's that one coming?" And she was like, I'm almost done, and she got it done, and she was so excited. So I just made that time to support her through that 2-hour block of time. So I find it's different for each of my clients at different stages of their work with me and what they're going through. So the accountability can be all over the map. Sometimes it's just making sure, going to class every day has been a big deal, and acknowledging them for that, when we get into sessions. So it varies quite a bit, as Kate had mentioned.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Julie. That's great. That's great.
Move on to the next slide, just because we have a couple more to get through. And
so what we can do, Krista, is because there's like 5 people with their hand raised. So let's talk about this slide, but bring like both slides together, because I know that people have some rich conversation. So like, just, opening it up a little bit more with this piece to it, and then we'll get to people whose hands are raised.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to kind of combine the next 2 slides because they kind of go a little bit hand in hand. And we've touched a little bit on this one, which is, how do we maintain those levels of accountability with our clients? But alongside that is tracking the progress. Like, how do we track their progress? Because as a coach, I find that, it's really easy for our students to forget their accomplishments, right? I mean, we all kind of know that, our folks tend to get so many more negative messages than positive. And so it's not surprising that they really don't hold on to that success sometimes. And so it's really interesting because I like to use Google Sheets to track things. So, we track grades, we track habits and different things like that. And then we're able to turn those into graphs and kind of give them that visual representation. But I had a student the other day, was like, yeah, I just feel like, I haven't made any progress. And by tracking our progress, we were able to go back and go, yeah, but look at, where you were like in September or October. And because we do it every week, we're able to kind of see that progress, which can give them that sense of accomplishment. Some individuals also use Google Forms to track their progress. There's the rating scales on Google Forms, so you can also use that information. Google Forms work really well if you're going to use that with like an automated text message or something like that. So you can kind of send that Google form for them as well. And then some individuals use calendars, different types of task lists, Wunderlist, Trello, different things like that. So there are some of the ways that we can track progress. Did anybody have a different way of tracking progress that maybe I did not mention?
And or feel free to, go back to the slide prior. Adela, I know you had your hand up for a while.
Oh, that was just back talking about accountability, how in addition to finding ways to be accountable with us, with the coach, and with themselves, to get them to figure out who else can be accountability partners on a day-to-day basis. So is it a study buddy? Is it a housemate that they can study with, or somebody to go to the gym with? So helping them realize that, we can't, unfortunately, be with them their whole entire lives. So how do you reach out for help and realize the value in having an accountability partner no matter what.
Yeah, super. Thank you. Thank you. Anne Marie.
Just to piggyback on what Adela said, just that the who else can be your accountability partner. I've had a couple of clients where that really went south on them quickly because they either didn't communicate or weren't really aware of what they needed and how they needed to be supported with an accountability partner. So, and it again is different for every person. So often if we're looking at other people as accountability partners, we have conversations about, you know, what would that person do that would really tick you off? What would feel really supportive, and how to communicate that with them in setting up that agreement for accountability partnership.
Very nice. Yeah. So kind of looking at it from all sides, Anne Marie?
Yeah. I had, for example, I had a teacher who was late handing in her reports, you know, frequently over years, and it had become an employment issue with her principal. And the principal was supportive, loves this teacher. She's doing amazing things in the classroom and with her students. But when it comes to the paperwork, it's just, that was her Achilles heel, no surprise. So the principal's idea was to set her up with another teacher as an accountability partner who tends to be like really on top of things. And so they were to meet every Thursday morning, and my client was supposed to go in and report on what she had done. Well, when she hadn't, the other person, they didn't really know what to do with their colleague, right? And there was a little bit of shaming there and embarrassment, unintentional. And I think also magnified by what my client was feeling. So it just got messy. And so we talked about like how it could actually be supportive.
Yeah.
And for her, it wasn't necessarily about, oh, I will get 2 student reports done in 2 hours and I'll report to you tomorrow. For her, it was more recognizing the process rather than the final deal.
Right. Right. And giving her some language too, and helping her figure out that language piece. Yeah. So important. So important. Faith, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah. A few ways that I track progress is, one is at the end of every session, I ask my client what their takeaways are, you know, any commitments they've made to themselves or what they want to do. And then I ask everyone before each coaching session to send me a prep form. It's just a list of 6 or 7 questions, which includes, you know, what did you get done, what got in your way, and so forth. And most of them, if not in the beginning, eventually do use that, which is really helpful because it sets us up for each session, and then they can go back and look through all of their prep forms, or if they can't do a prep form, they send me an email. Another thing I do is interim evaluations of the coaching. So depending on what's going on, we might do an interim evaluation monthly, quarterly, it just depends. But, you know, that's another way that helps people get a snapshot so that they can see what they've accomplished and help them get clear on where is it that they're really wanting to go.
Nice. Okay, great. Kind of almost like a performance review type of thing after just a little bit.
Yeah, and in a way, the weekly, well, not weekly, but before each coaching session reports are a little bit like that too. And it's structured in a way which is very matter of fact. There's no like, oh no, you know, you didn't do this or that. It's just straight up reporting. And I also tell clients, you know, let's just look at this as a safe lab for experimentation. So when we're monitoring how you're doing, if something works, great, we'll build on it. If not, that's also really good in a way because it gives us a cue of where not to go and, you know, how to change things up. So I really emphasize taking a very neutral and affirmative and appreciative approach to what comes out of the progress tracking.
Nice. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. And Kate added in the chat that she agrees with Anne Marie that she often works with her clients on co-creating the conversation with that accountability partner, what they need from them, how they want to receive the communication, and when they want intervention if their partners recognize they're behind. So absolutely. Alice, you've had your hand raised.
Yes, the accountability is very often connected with the concept of success and failure. And I have something on my website where, and I tell this to clients, I don't believe in failure. I believe there is success and learning. And that gives them the opportunity when we start a call for them to say, well, it was a big learning week. And it allows us to kind of get a chuckle in there. And they've not said something negative. They've said something positive. I've learned something. And so I say, tell me about it. What have you learned? And it's a good way of tapping into the things that are getting in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Which is essential, which is equally as crucial as the success pieces.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you. And Peter, you have your hands raised. Do you want to hop in again?
No, that was just left there.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Okay, I think we're, yeah, go ahead.
So I think this is a really good question because, you know, we want to hold our clients accountable, right? And we do that in different ways, like automated text messages or emails or, you know, check-ins by phone. Not that many people use the old-fashioned phone anymore, but all these different ways of holding someone accountable. But how do we keep ourselves accountable as coaches to kind of support our clients in their accountability? And I think this is really important too, because I think that it's almost like modeling too, right? So like if I have a student who, you know, we decide that they're going to check in at a certain time on a certain day, you know, I literally sit there and go, oh, while you're setting your alarm, I'm going to set my alarm on my calendar too, so I can make sure that I hear from you, right? So that they're actually seeing that, you know, and I'll say, if I don't do this, I'll forget if I don't hear from you. So I want to make sure I remember as well. So that they're aware that, you know, they're not alone in this process of being accountable, right? Are there any other ways that someone can think of, and it looks like Kate has her hand raised, of ways that we can kind of, you know, as coaches, make sure that we're kind of helping with that accountability piece?
To piggyback on what you just said, Krista, I set a time in my calendar as well, but my time is actually related to a follow-up question. When my client sets that time, puts it in their calendar, my next question for them is, if I don't hear from you by that time, when would you like me to follow up with you, or what would you like for me to do to support you next? So often they'll say, if you don't hear from me, then, you know, I would love for you to call me by, you know, 7 p.m. or, you know, send me a text and remind me. So then I'll add that into my own calendar.
Great.
That's a great point. It always amazes me as well with students when you kind of, you know, pose that question to them, where they'll be like, okay, well, if you don't hear me, text again. And I'm like, okay, well, if I text you a second time and I still don't hear from you, what should be the next step? And then they'll be like,
yes,
time to reach out to mom and dad. Like,
yeah.
Which I think is a great, you know, self-awareness that they realize that, you know, so absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Faith, did you have another comment?
I think this is a very interesting and tricky area, because we want our clients to ultimately not be too dependent on the coach, since normally that's, you know, however long it is, it's a limited time engagement. And so I just wanted to share that with the group that, you know, for example, I do not text. You know, I just choose that that's how I live my life. I don't text with clients. Which, you know, I'll tell people up front, and some people don't want to work with me if I won't text, and that's fine. But I think it's just a very interesting, important thing to how we navigate that. And I have a feeling that from listening to everybody, I probably do less of the in-between times and tracking than some of the others do. And also, I don't work with students unless I'm also working with the parents. So it's kind of built in. But I think I'm just glad we're talking about, it's a really important point, because ultimately, whether it's finding a buddy, a romantic partner, a housemate, a family member, a good friend, I'm always looking to help the clients find something other than just me.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that.
I think that that's a great point, but I also think you have to consider the age of the individual you're working with. When we're working with younger individuals, their frontal lobe hasn't developed yet. And so
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I started by saying I work with older people and my kids. So maybe it's not appropriate to this call since we're focusing more on students. Like with my college students, this is
no. I think it's a great point because, you know, I think it is important. Even with students, as they get a little bit older, we have to figure out how to scale that back, and we do. So no, I think it's a great point. And, you know, we want to make sure that we're kind of addressing adults and students. So absolutely.
Yep. Yep. Let me see. Hold on. I got to find the other hand. Oh, Julie.
Yeah, I'm similar to what Faith was just saying. My corporate adult clients, I don't find I have as much of the accountability between sessions via text message and such. But with college students, absolutely 100%. They will often, have an exam, and I want them to be able to feel comfortable telling me how they felt going through it, any things that they can kind of take away from that experience right in the moment, so that, and then I go ahead and record that in their file so that I have a record of something that was shared between sessions. But similar to what Krista had said, is I also make sure that I write down if I'm going to have an accountability conversation with them or text them at a certain point. If I didn't hear from them, what will the next response be? And I put it in my calendar. Okay, I'm going to put it in my calendar. You put it in your calendar. We're both doing the same thing in order to help them become more accountable to themselves. Yep. So they see, this is what I do. I don't have ADHD. I don't have accountability, issues of getting things done, but I'm doing the same thing I'm asking you to do. This is a skill you can do long term. And they get the idea that, okay, this is a tool that I get to use for myself. If I don't have it done by this time, maybe they can be accountable. Eventually they get to somebody else. But at the beginning, especially in the very beginning with a college student, we have a lot of accountability right at the beginning. Maybe every day, maybe they may be my life for the next month, but it's something that I think has to be started so they get used to making commitments and following through. And it's that follow through that's so crucial that they need to be able to learn how to do, and then carries on into their career.
Very good. Thank you so much. Rebecca, would you like to chime in?
So one thing that I'm just paying attention to here is the fact that our clients tend to get dependent on us, and we need those boundaries there simply because we get it. There's very few people in their lives that actually, even parents who actually understand how their brain is working and why they have the challenges they have. So I currently have a client who's wanting to work on accountability with her partner when she checks out, when she doesn't pay attention, but he still is viewing that behavior as a moral failure. She's not paying attention to him, and she's a professional, and it's still difficult for her to try to educate or ask him to educate himself about how her brain works. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, thank you, really. Thank you, Rebecca. Catherine, do you want to jump in on this?
I do, because that was a good lead-in for mine. So the quote my Angelou, I think is the one that made it, was, "We train people how to treat us," right? So that's a big thing I work on with my clients, especially my college clients, because they're at a place where they really don't want to be talking to their parents, right? They don't want to use them as accountability. They are so done with that, but they need it. And so what we try to get them to thinking about is, I can train them how to cue me. I can train them the wording that I want them to use. I can train them with the things when I call them into play, just like with the coach, right? So they're learning from me how we can create that relationship that's going to work for them. So we're looking for the wording. When I ask them if there's someone who can hold them accountable, and I say, what are you going to tell them to cue you with? Because the power now is back in their hands. It's not these other people. And in response to what Rebecca said, that would be a place where my client maybe would say, listen, I'm not going to respond well to what you just did, right? I'm not going to respond. If you do it like this, I'm going to respond, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I tell my clients, if you do something every time they yell at you, then they're going to think yelling is what you need to do. You need to train them that you'll respond in different ways when you use this. But they want their power back to manage this versus this person coming in. And so bring them in as a partner, tell them how you want to be cued. I always ask that as a coach too. I say, okay, I'm gonna send you that text. What would you like me to say to cue you about this, right? What words or whatever? Because they're going to have to learn how to do that anyway, right? Because they are going to need other people in their life, but you can take the power. Don't, let them continue to treat you that way. Train them in a different way.
Love that. I love that. Great. Thank you. We're at the top of the hour. Krista, will you just announce how you make those videos?
Oh,
I mean, what company is it? Because somebody had asked.
It's called Vond. It's like Vyond. I'll let you know, though. It's expensive, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Linnell. Nope. All you need to just do is put into the email the opening and closing word. If you kind of put in the subject line, words for CCEU, and then go ahead and in the body of your email, just put in the opening and closing word. Sometimes it's helpful if you put the date for today's call or whatever. So the closing word is steady, STEADY, steady. So go ahead and send that in with your opening word within 24 hours, and you'll be able to get your CCEU. I want to thank everyone so much for such rich conversation. We are trying to find a platform on the new website where we can continue these conversations outside of this 1 hour, because there are such rich conversations, and to have a forum where we can kind of come together and keep going. So I do have that out there, and I'm waiting to have the magical people who are doing website stuff get back to me. So I want to know that I so appreciate everyone's conversation, and I am looking for ways that we can get together and continue that offline.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone's participation and such rich conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Have a wonderful day, everyone.